Good afternoon. I'm Addison Pollock. I'm the Director of Community Engagement with AARP Indiana. I want to welcome you to a community conversation we're having this afternoon with several experts in the field of fraud and just talking about how we can prevent fraud in your lives. I'm glad to be joined by Dan Rosenberg, who is the Director and Coordinator of Crime Stoppers. He joins us today to talk about an upcoming Shred-It event in Indianapolis and Central Indiana and why participating in that event can help you prevent fraud. Dan is also joined by Lieutenant Keith Minch from IMPD's Financial Crimes Unit. So welcome, Lieutenant, as well as Detective Stephen Jones, who specializes in prescription fraud. So welcome, Detective. Before I kick it over to Dan to kind of jump into this conversation, I just want to let everyone know that Crime Stoppers is hosting a community Shred-It Day on Saturday, April 23rd from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at 5 Central Indiana locations. And you can shred sensitive documents that you may have. You can also bring in electronics, as well as there will be a pharmaceutical drug take back at each of the locations. So those locations are at WTHR in the Indianapolis off of North Meridian Street, Creekside Middle School in Carmel, Belzer Middle School in Lawrence, Greenwood Park Mall, and the Speedway Police Department. So we're so glad to support this event. AARP is a longtime sponsor of this event, and we're just glad that we can get out the word today about preventing fraud, and making sure that you can get out ahead of it before it impacts you and your families. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Starting with Dan, would you mind just telling the audience a little bit about yourself and your career?
So my name is Daniel Rosenberg. I'm a local kid. I grew up on the near north side of Indianapolis, Indiana. I went to Chard High School. Don't hold that against me, especially if you went to Cathedral. But I'm a near north side kid. So I originally got started at the sheriff's department back in about 2001. I was a building deputy. So my first job ever was standing a post at the city county building, the place where everyone is happy to pay their taxes. And I welcomed everybody into the city county building. I then became what's called a merit officer, joined the sheriff's department. And in 2005, our two law enforcement agencies came together and created IMPD, where one of my first sergeants was a guy named Keith Minch. Not to date anybody on here, but I started working on the northwest side of Indianapolis in the Pike Township area. So if you ever saw me on Georgetown Road, that's about where I was. Then about 5 years ago, I was promoted to sergeant, and I was asked to take over Crime Stoppers not too long after that. Interestingly enough, Crime Stoppers is its own separate organization. So while I am still technically a sergeant with IMPD, when I'm working here at Crime Stoppers, I am an employee of Crime Stoppers. I'm the director coordinator of Crime Stoppers. I report to a civilian board, and my job now is to coordinate anonymous tips that then go to the law enforcement in 17 different counties all over central Indiana. So not just IMPD, but all the way up to Anderson and all the way down to Bloomington, Indiana. So it's a huge area. Lots of different, about 65 different policing agencies that we have contact with. We do thousands and thousands of anonymous tips every year. Sometimes those lead to arrests, and we pay rewards for those. But I think most of your viewers will not be surprised by the fact that our services are really used by people who just want to create better communities, and that's why we partner with AARP. Is that they're all about making better and safer communities. So that's a little bit about me. I'll leave it to the other guys now.
Excellent. Thank you, Dan. We appreciate it. We appreciate the partnership, longtime partnership. So thank you for that. Lieutenant Minch, you are with the Financial Crimes Unit. Can you tell us a little bit more about your career?
So can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I've been on the department about 24 years. As Dan pointed out, I was a sergeant on Northwest, good Lord, 15 years ago maybe. From Southern Indiana, not from Indianapolis. I joined the Marine Corps right out of high school. Had about 11 different duty stations in my 6 years in the Marines, and 2.5 of those were overseas in Europe, where I met my wife. We have 4 kids, and I've done, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 different things on the department, from the training academy to the street. I've been in financial crimes about 10 years, and so that's pretty much where I am now.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being here today. We appreciate you sharing your expertise with us. Moving along to Detective Jones, you specialize in prescription fraud. That's really interesting. It intersects with our issues from a fraud standpoint, and then also prescription drugs is obviously something that AARP interfaces with. So if you don't mind just telling us a little bit more about your career in law enforcement, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm from Anderson, Indiana, studied criminal justice and graduated from Anderson University, and always wanted a career in law enforcement. Ultimately found my home here for the Indianapolis Metro Police. Started out my career on North District. Sergeant Rosenberg was my sergeant on North District for a little while, and so was Lieutenant Minch. I did about 10 years on the street in North District. For those, I was a field training officer. So when the new recruits came out from the academy, they would come to the street and learn how to run the street. After about 10 years of patrol, I came over to prescription fraud in 2020. And I've really, really loved it. Prior to that, I was actually a pharmacy tech, so I had a really good background in pharmaceuticals as well. So I understand the pharmacy side of things as well as the criminal side of things in these types of investigations.
Excellent. Well, that's a perfect background for the role you're in now. So that's amazing. Well, I want to thank you all for being here today. I'm going to kick it over to Dan to kind of lead us through our conversation, and I will be here as well. So I'm just going to hang back for now. Dan, take it away.
Sure. So, Lieutenant, I thought we might kind of kick this off by talking a little bit about financial crimes and what it is. When we say, like, what do we mean? What are the different things that are happening that are financial?
I'm getting a lot of background. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
I think what you asked was what are the different types of financial crimes we see? Is that what it was?
Kind of explain a little bit to the folks. When we talk about financial crimes, what are we talking about?
So essentially, financial crimes can be it's essentially fraud. So anything related to fraud usually has a financial nexus to it. So whether it's identity deception, your credit card gets stolen and it's used, your check gets stolen and it's cloned, anything from the scams online where people send money through gift cards, could be anything from an email hack that somebody intercepts an email, gives you a fictitious routing and account number, and a lot of that deals with like mortgage brokers and stuff. They'll end up getting that hacked and maybe wire transfer $50,000 into the wrong account. So when you say financial crimes, I mean, it's a very broad area, but it pretty much just relates to anything fraud related that has a back end of money.
I think one of the common misconceptions about financial fraud is that it type of victim. It has just seniors who people are taking advantage of. And I think what you're telling me can all be subject to victims. Is that what you see in your work?
Yes. So we do get a lot of our online victims, the suspects tend to target the elderly, and that would be largely because they're from a different generational gap to where they may not be as tech savvy. So there's the online can do that, or it could be individuals. But I mean, everybody with today's current gas needs, everybody uses a credit card, usually at a pump. And we get a lot of cases where skimmers are installed on those pumps. Or if you use an ATM machine, they have a skimmer installed. And essentially, a skimmer is just something that records the magnetic strip on the back of your credit card. And then they go and create a fictitious card and then have fun using your account. So it can be from as little as 5 years old for like identity theft or something, all the way up to 100.
One of the ways that certainly all of us could be taken advantage of is if people had all information, right? Dates of birth or whatever.
So that would be primarily with the identity theft. So we get a lot of it where we have had search warrants that we've done where we've recovered someone's mail or trash, and the people were basically looking for bank account numbers that they had thrown away. Because if I can get your bank account number on a statement, I can look up the bank, I can get the routing the number, and then I can essentially create a counterfeit check and go cash it on your stuff. The other one we get is a lot of times they're searching for detailed information. So a lot of the online phishing scams are for purposes of they've done their research, whether they do it online or they've done trash pulls or whatever, and they're finding out a little bit about your family. For example, they may call up an elderly person and say, "Hey, Grandma, this is, Keith, and I'm in trouble, and, I don't want to tell Mom and Dad, so I want to know if you can, send me $1,500 so I can post bond." That tends to be more believable if they have a little bit of personal information on you. So that would be the main reason for those things.
So one of the things that at our Shredded Day is that we try and protect people by basically recycling paper. And that's why I'm kind of looping information is I think one of the best ways, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to kind of keep ourselves from being taken advantage of is that we make sure we have paper or we have certain information that's placed certain places that we protect it in kind of a way. So what we do at our Shredded Day is we'll shred all of your documents, make sure they get destroyed the way. We do that for $5 for a foot by foot kind of box. And kind of that's one of the many things we do at our Shredded Day. Do that with electronics. I think you mentioned there's that electronic, the new generation information online, getting from computers. Think of like the hack, that kind of thing. We see that as well.
You kind of froze there a little bit, so I apologize. I didn't get all the question. I think what you're asking is, does shredding electronics and your personal information help protect you from being a victim? Was that your question?
Yeah, that's kind of how that's.
Yes, of course. So essentially, the least amount of information somebody knows about you, the better off you're going to be. And whether that comes from something electronically that you have discarded that has some link to your bank account or has some personal information on your family, or all the way down to a bank statement that you've thrown out in the mail. So definitely the least information you get out there, which is the problem with social media. I have a social media account also, but I'm usually pretty safeguarded on what I put out there. So absolutely, if you can get that stuff destroyed, it's going to help protect you.
So let me ask you, I know, but if somebody took advantage of me, and I thought I called the police, let's say somehow appeared from my bank account, what kind of information would I need for?
So if you're wanting to file a report, it's generally the date, time, how it happened. The officer doing the report would not put a routing and account number in the narrative because our reports are public information, as you know. So, I mean, people could go down. So we would only put like the last four of the bank account number and then the bank. And that's as a safeguard for the victim as well. Then generally it's where it was used, when it was used, and for the amount. And then we can usually follow up with the banks from there and see if there's any kind of video evidence or anything that exists.
Jurisdiction, or would there be a time when something at a federal level, or is it always going to be start with you?
In almost all cases, financial crimes will start at the local level. All the local authorities, whether IMPD or other jurisdictions, usually have counterparts or connections that they can reach out to in the feds. Federal law enforcement generally tends to work more cases that are more in depth, long term, larger amounts. So it's kind of a hand in hand. I mean, if it extends past local resources, then we'll reach out to the federal agencies.
Okay, that's great to know. I think a lot of times people are overwhelmed when this happens. They feel like they're not exactly sure what they're supposed to do outside of maybe just calling someone. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about, the fraud watch. And Addison, I'll do on that part, and then I'll jump in Crime Stoppers is. But I want to make sure that if people feel like they're a victim, they know where to go, what to do.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So the AARP Fraud Watch Network is one of our main fraud fighting tools that we have at AARP, and it really aligns with AARP's core values that we are a consumer advocate organization. We're a wise friend and fierce defender of not only our members but all individuals 50 years and older, 50 plus. The Fraud Watch Network, it's a free resource for all people. You don't have to be an AARP member to utilize it. AARP is your partner in helping you proactively spot scams and just making sure that you have the guidance you need to prevent being scammed or prevent engaging with some of these frauds. We believe that the best way to combat fraud and scams is through prevention. So we're trying to equip all older adults and their families with information that they can use to spot a scam ahead of time and learn about what are the newest frauds and scams that are happening. Like the grandparent fraud that the lieutenant talked about. Like that's a very common one where it's a someone posing as a grandchild calling their grandparent. So these are things that we can inform you about through the Fraud Watch Network. You can sign up for notifications. You can contact the AARP Fraud Helpline. The number is 1-877-908-3360, and it's free, available to anyone. And that's just an information hotline. And you can find support if you are targeted by scams or any sort of fraud. We have trained fraud specialists who are there to provide you support. So again, that AARP fraud helpline number is 1-877-908-3360, or you can also go online at aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork. So that's really what we are. We're a free resource. We have plenty of literature that you can read as well, which you can dive a little bit deeper into some of the common scams that are out there.
And one of the reasons I want to kind of speak to everybody out there on this is that Crime Stoppers likes to team up with law enforcement and with AARP, but we have trouble letting people know what exactly we are and what tool we are, and Crime Stoppers is an anonymous reporting system. So we want you to first and always be a witness if you can. If you feel that you just absolutely can't be a witness, but it's something that law enforcement should know, then we want you to use our service. But first and foremost, we always want you to know that law enforcement only can make good arrests and keep you safe if they have information and they have the evidence to make a difference. So we are a tool to help people in the community, and we are a tool that law enforcement uses to make investigations. But we are not actually calling, when you call us, it's not actually calling the police. And that's an important distinction. So let's give an example here real quick. If I thought that I was getting strange phone calls and somebody who was acting like my granddaughter but wasn't, and I hadn't given them any money and I didn't do anything, I could maybe go to the Fraud Watch and check and see if that was something that was fraudulent that was occurring. Is that correct, Addison?
Correct. Yes, sir.
And here's an example of how you might use Crime Stoppers. If you saw that your neighbor was stealing everybody's trash, and it looked like they kept going and rooting through the trash and looking for bills, and you thought, wow, that might be a scam, but your neighbor knew exactly who you were and you were terrified of your neighbor and didn't feel like you could call the police for fear that something bad would happen to you, but you thought the police should know, you could give us a call and we could take your anonymous tip and let law enforcement know you might want to look into this person. So those are a couple of examples, but I did want to kind of throw that back over to the lieutenant. Lieutenant, how important is it that the community is really telling you what's going out there when you're trying to make a difference in these investigations?
Hey, Lieutenant, I think you're on mute. Sorry, we're not hearing you.
Yeah, how about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah. That thing switched over there. So like in the example you just gave, I mean, that person could have already victimized every neighbor there. And then from the point that the call's made, we now have a potential suspect. So like if we can start doing analysis on, okay, how many identity theft cases or credit card cases do we have in this area? And then that would help us provide a suspect with actually the crime. So, I mean, that's huge. I mean, we probably as a department only come in contact with maybe 10% of the criminals. And then, the public is seeing these people every day. So, it's absolutely huge to pass that information along.
Okay. Lieutenant, before we kind of switch over to the prescription fraud side of things, I wondered if you could kind of give us your little list of best tips on ways to stay safe from financial crimes.
So probably the number one would be with credit card fraud. Don't use your debit card at a gas pump, or look or at least look at the gas pump to see if that panel is alarmed. Some of the stores will have a panel saying it's alarmed if it's open. The reason being is it takes about 30 seconds to install a skimmer on a gas pump. And then once you use your debit card, and if they get access to it and steal it, your money's gone. And then you got to work with the bank to get it back. To where the credit card, you have a little bit of time on your side to dispute those charges. On the other side, if you don't have fraud monitoring with your credit cards or debit cards, it'd be a good idea to get it, because we get a lot of people who call within minutes after their card being used. As you know, and everybody knows, time is of essence when it comes to solving these type of cases. And the other big one would be like ATMs. So if I'm stealing your credit card information to clone it, it's when you insert your credit card in, I'm copying the mag strip on the back. And like at ATMs, they generally try and get your PIN number. So one of the things that I shot a video a couple of years back, and it was essentially a skimmer that had been installed on an ATM. And they had a little camera right above the keypad because they want your PIN, because that's quick access. So if you can maybe just look the next time you use an ATM and, maybe kind of feel and see if there's a potential camera there. One thing I recommend is maybe when you punch in your 4-digit PIN, you physically touch 8 numbers, but only key in 4. Or maybe you think, if someone was trying to record my PIN number, where would a camera be? And then kind of hold your hand over that. Because in most cases, your debit card's useless without the PIN. But when they get the PIN, it's a problem. So that'd probably be my number one.
Thank you. Is there anything that we haven't talked about with financial crimes that you think is super important, Lieutenant? We want to make sure everybody's got all the information that they need out there.
No, I think just piggybacking on what's already been said, whether you have Fraud Watch or you freeze your credit or something, you need to have some type of freeze or some type of monitoring service on it. You can set that up. I don't know if Fraud Watch does the person's credit cards or walks them through that, but you can set that up with your bank. In today's day and age, you basically just have to be on your toes.
Fantastic. All right. Well, let's transition a little bit here. And this one, I think, will, a lot of people don't think that this particular type of crime can touch on all of us, but it actually can. No matter our age, no matter where we come from, no matter our socioeconomic background, this particular crime really does affect all of us in lots of different ways. So I kind of want to turn that over to the detective. It's his specialty. Obviously, he's got a lot of background in it, even before he was in law enforcement. Detective, maybe you can just kind of walk us through what you do on a normal basis and why you think it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a prescription fraud unit here with Indianapolis Metro Police. The unit's been around for about 40 years or so. So we specialize in fraud or forged and fraudulent prescriptions, meaning that if someone wants to go write their own script and take it to a pharmacy to obtain narcotic medication fraudulently, we specialize in that, or any drug diversion. That's basically a fancy word for theft. Anytime medication is stolen, that could be at a pharmacy, a doctor's office, from your home, or if you have a prescription at a pharmacy, someone could go pose as you, saying, "Hey, I'm here to pick up, said medication." And actually, at a pharmacy, that's all the information you need. If you know a person's name and date of birth, and they fill a medication there, it's usually a pharmacy's policy that they just release that medication to you. So those are the type of things that we investigate. And I mean, we have a substantial amount of cases every year that come in involving, either fraud or forged scripts or medications that are stolen from individuals.
Well, I kind of alluded to the fact that this touches on everybody. And so if you would kind of widen that circle, you know, yeah, people are going and getting drugs that are not theirs. But what are some of the kind of effects on society of these of people doing these drugs, and even of being out there trying to sell and steal these drugs? What are the effects on our community from that?
Well, I mean, it's no secret there's been an opioid epidemic in Indiana for some time now, and that trend is only rising. I think looking at some statistics over the last couple of years, you look at fatal overdoses just in Marion County, Indianapolis area alone. I think last year we had close to 900. Those are just fatal overdoses. That's not including the actual overdoses where people survived them. So I think the more of these narcotics that are being diverted or stolen from homes or obtained fraudulently from pharmacies, I mean, it just increases those numbers even more.
Yeah, and I really wanted to touch on that because you know, addiction is a real problem in our society. I think we go back to it, but prescription fraud, especially. You know, I have young kids, and we still see today this this popular thing of going into people's cabinets and taking their medicine, and the effects on that on all of us can be that we lose people. That we lose our loved ones. But I think there's also an extended kind of thing to that, which is that once people start down this path of taking narcotics that are not prescribed to them and abusing them, it leads them to all other different types of things that cause all kinds of mass issues in our communities, theft and robberies, burglaries, all kinds of stuff like that. Do you see those intersections in your work, Detective?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, if you think about that, you know, once the reason why people, when they start abusing drugs, is they all get started taking prescription narcotics. It all starts there. And then once they get addicted to prescription narcotics, they can't get those, then they actually turn to more opioids on the street, you know, cocaine or heroin or other things. And then at some point, you're going to have to find a way to support your habit. So yes, you will see the robbing and the stealing and anything they can do, because once you're addicted to it, it becomes a disease. And then your body will just do anything that it needs to obtain it, just so you don't have to go through the withdrawals.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I was talking to. You know, I have a dad who's unfortunately been dealing with Parkinson's for the last 20 years. And we have a lot of medications around the house. How dangerous can some of those medications be? So let's talk a little bit about what do we do to make sure that we're keeping our medications out of other people's hands?
So I would just have a plan in place. I mean, definitely try to secure your medications, even though it may be an inconvenience for some people that take these medications every day of trying to secure it. But I mean, if they're in your home, then they're accessible to whoever's in your home. That could be a family, friend, or a guest. Anybody that's in the home would have access to those. And the one thing that we don't think about is that, you know, people that have kids or grandkids, you know, there's a lot of accidental overdoses among kids, just because they find this stuff and they have no idea what it is. I mean, it's no different than, you know, with my firearm at home. Since I'm a police officer, I always keep that secure away from my kids. So, I mean, it's almost the same thing. You know, they go, you know, you can child-proof your home as much as possible, but trust me, I've got 2 kids of my own, and they will find anything and everything they can. And if it's not secured properly, they may not know what it is, and it could be an accidental overdose.
Absolutely. Now, let's say that you know, you don't want to be a policeman anymore, but you don't want that darn firearm around. You don't just throw it in the trash, right?
No, that is not the best. No, absolutely not. So, yeah, you're touching upon the actual safe disposal. So, and there's 2 words there. Okay, safe disposal. It's not one thing just to throw it away. because then again, like Lieutenant Minch kind of touched upon, it's just sitting out in your trash out in the open for anybody to kind of root through and dig through. And also the safe portion of it, some people think about flushing it down the toilet, but that's not really a safe manner to dispose of it as well, because a lot of those medications have a half-life, and when they break down in our water system, it just never goes away. It just keeps building up, and people keep flushing their medications down. So I would recommend, if people do dispose of them, to do it with our drug takebacks. I know if you can't make it to our Shred It Day, we do have and maintain 5 drug drop boxes at various district sites, North districts. I think there's 5, all our 5 districts that you can go drop them at. And you can just walk in the lobby, drop them in the mailbox. There's no questions asked. There's no appointment, no paperwork, nothing. It's a nice and convenient and secure way to dispose of meds. And like I was talking about, they're not really secure in your trash can outside. I've actually had cases where someone threw their bottle out and went through the trash, found the bottle, saw the name, had the RX number. And it's just as easy for someone to call that pharmacy and say, hey, I've got the RX number. I'm due for my refill. They go pick it up. And that's how people get these medications.
Yeah. So, I always find that to be fascinating, because I'm not sure, before I was involved in law enforcement, I don't think I ever really thought about it. If I had medication that I never finished taking, it probably sat in my medicine cabinet until, one day that I did my spring cleaning and just threw it in the trash can and never thought of it again. And I think that's a great thing about the Shred It Day and working with AARP is that we want you to think about that when you're doing your spring cleaning, when you're doing your fall cleaning. Just throw it in a bag and drop by and see us, and we'll take it for you. And then we'll really get rid of it. It's not coming back if we get rid of it. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about prescription fraud. Just if you would, I think people also think that it's just kind of a individual thing where, it's just somebody who maybe has an addiction issue and they're doing it. That's part of it, but it's also organized out there, right? I think there's a real organization to trying to do these prescription frauds and trying to get the narcotics out on the street. Can you talk anything about that? Tell us anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, there definitely is a criminal network to it for sure. Recently, I had a case back in January where I had someone come through, and just in Indianapolis, Marion County area, they did 21 fraudulent prescriptions of the highest strength of oxycodone. And I think at the end of it, this guy walked away with nearly 1,000 tablets of the strongest strength of oxycodone. So with him obtaining that, obviously he's not taking that all for himself. So that is being distributed amongst our community. So in terms that kind of goes hand in hand, but I talked about some of the fatal overdoses. People take these high strength oxycodones and, sometimes their body just can't handle it.
Yeah. And I want to kind of reach out to everybody and let them know, if you know people who are distributing narcotics or selling narcotics like that, please call the police. Always call the police first. We need people who are going to be witnesses or victims. That's the only way that we make inroads. But if you cannot, if you absolutely feel you can't, at least let Crime Stoppers know so that we can reach out to Detective Jones and help him make some of these arrests, because it really is big money. 1,000 tablets, that's quite a bit of cash out on the street.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, so if we're going to put together a list on our do's and don'ts when it comes to prescription fraud, Detective Jones, can you lead us through a little, almost like a little safety list, if you would?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I talked about, any medications that you're on, try your best you can to secure those, or out of the reach of small kids. If there's a medication that you are not taking anymore and discontinued, like you said, just get rid of it. You're not taking it anymore. Eliminate any kind of risk of a friend, a family member, or any kind of guest that would get their hands on it to misuse it or abuse it. And then if you cannot, like your bottles that are empty, what I would recommend also, try tearing the label off of that as well. Eliminate your name, eliminate any RX numbers, anything like that, or taking a Sharpie and eliminate that, because, even though you may not be getting rid of medication, your information is still on there. It usually tells what pharmacy it was at, what the medication was for, the name, like I said, and also RX number. So just take that extra second and safeguard yourself. So that way, if someone does go rooting through your trash, all they find is a pill bottle with no information on it, and they can't do anything with it. So another thing I would recommend too as well is that if you do pick up your medications from a local retail pharmacy, speak to your pharmacist or pharmacy tech and let them know that you can put safeguards in place that say, hey, can you make a note that only I am allowed to pick up my medication? That way, if you get someone showing up saying, hey, I'm, such and such as, brother or daughter or another relative picking up medication. Sometimes, like I said, the pharmacy doesn't know who is who, and it's just their policy. If you know what medication someone's on and a date of birth and their name, that's all they need to do to release medication to that individual. So those are just some steps and tips that I would say to safeguard yourself against some of this stuff going on.
Very, very cool. One of the things that I think I keep hearing as I talk to you guys is that we're all kind of a support for community. Really, the best thing that helps everybody stay safe is if the folks out there are using our resources. So I think that's something that's really important, because when people use AARP, they have safer communities. They have better communities. When people get involved with their local law enforcement, they have safer communities. They have better communities. So it's really all of you out there who lead us. And even though we all are here to stop the bad guys or try and solve problems, I think that's something that we often forget, is that it's really everybody out there who kind of leads the ship. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out as a personal note to everybody. Does anybody have any kind of last thoughts on I always kind of say this, when I think of prescription fraud, what should I think of? And I'll kind of throw it to you, Detective Jones.
Oh, when you think of prescription fraud, just anything pill related. I mean, if you guys have questions or concerns or anything, we're here to help. I mean, that's what our unit was created for. Anything, in, like I said, medication related. There's been times if someone has a large thing of medications they want picked up, we've made exceptions for that to do disposal for that. Or if you've been a victim of a crime where medication has been stolen, please contact us. I mean, anything regarding medication and illegitimate means and abuse, please think of us.
Awesome. LT, financial crimes. Remember.
Wow. So yeah, I guess the kind of what you're getting at is, we're kind of in this together. So, if you see something or you hear something, then let us know, whether it's through Crime Stoppers or go into one of our districts or file a police report.
Fantastic. All right, Addison, I'm going to turn this one back over to you.
Sounds good, Dan. Thanks so much. I also want to thank Lieutenant Minch and Detective Jones for taking their time out of their days to be here with us. I want to plug once again the AARP Fraud Watch Network. You can access that at aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork. We also have a network helpline, which you can reach at 1-877-908-3360. And then also something I didn't mention earlier, you can receive biweekly Watchdog alerts via the Fraud Watch Network. You just need to text FWN to 50757 to receive text alerts on a biweekly basis. Again, thank you to Lieutenant Detective. Thank you, Dan, for coordinating today and highlighting the Shred It Day that is coming up on. The event is coming up on April 23rd. That's a Saturday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. There is a $5 requested donation per shredding box, and you can access these shredding events at Creekside Middle School in Carmel, Belzer Middle School in Lawrence, Greenwood Park Mall, Speedway Police Department, and in Indianapolis at WTHR off of 1000 North Meridian Street. So if you'd like more information, check out Crime Stoppers, and we're looking forward to seeing you at the event. Thank you.
One more thing, Addison, if I can.
Yeah.
We also do. We dispose of your electronics.
Right.
$20 donation for any screen. But basically, if you can plug it in, we'll destroy it and then we'll recycle it, which is even better. So, and that we work with our partners over at Technology Recyclers to do that. Just remember, if you're putting it on a tablet or you're putting it in your phone or you're putting it on a hard drive, you got to dispose of that properly too, because like the lieutenant said, if they get your info, they can use it. So we hope everybody comes out and sees us. And I want to say thank you to AARP. This has been fantastic.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.